Okay, hi everyone. This is sarajamshidi. I am a publisher and producer for Gold2 News. You are in my channel, Peace Talk with Sarah. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. So this is a few quick housekeeping about this video. Basically, this is a raw video. I don't know video editing and I don't have time to learn about the video editing. So that's why I just hit the start button here, and then when it finishes, I hit this finish, and then that's it. It's on my cell phone and that's it. It's just a raw video. I just want you to bear with me. I do my best to communicate as effectively as I can. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to talk about reading forbidden books in Iran. And I'm just going to tell you a very interesting, funny story that I had about reading a few books back in my home country in Tehran. Many people ask me about the personal life of Iranians in living in Iran, and this is my take of my own personal story. So this story goes back when I was growing up in Tehran when I was 16, 17 years old. In my previous video, I explained that how I found many of the interesting books in my dad's attic of books that was all about books that I was not supposed to read, books about sex and about eroticism, and I found those books and I read them. So if you haven't watched that video, I think you should, because it's a funny story. But this one is about so basically reading some of the forbidden books. This is my note that I'm just gonna, it's a very quick ones, some of them in Farsi, I written some of them in English, but this is just a quick note that I'm gonna look at when I talk with you. We had lots of books in my dad's house. We had so many books. Of the books that, and I almost read all of the books that I could find. One of the my favorite subject was Sufism. So we had books after books about Sufism, about Rumi, about Maulana, and one of my favorite books was Pelle Pelle ta mulaqat Khuda, Abdul Hussein Zarrin Koob. So step by step until meeting God. And Muhyiddin Arabi was the other author that I truly cherished. And also by Yazid Bastami, I read books of Tazkiratul Awliya. I read books of Attar Neyshaburi. I read so many books about Sufism, and I also not only those books. I also read books about some of the books that it was forbidden. It was forbidden in Iran. One thing that I think you need to understand when we are talking about Iran or Tehran, we are talking about a kind of a society that was going through lots of transformation, lots of changes. So it was revolution, a few years after revolution, and during this period that I'm talking about, it was the war between Iran and Iraq. So basically a tumultuous situation, the society under so many difficult period, and still is, and everything was into consideration according to the authorities. People were not allowed to do so many things because the country was under too much pressure inside and outside. So therefore the public has been controlled by the authority. One of the ways that they were controlling the public was to see what they read and don't read. But my dad didn't care less. I mean, he didn't care about what the authority was allowing or not allowing. He was really all about us having the education and just going beyond what the Islamic Republic was giving us. So therefore, not only of those Sufi books that we read, I just need to get rid of this notification here. Bear with me a second. Yes, it's on my phone, so that's why I had to just get rid of the notification on the top of the page. So not only that, not only those Sufi books, we also had books about that was considered forbidden books. Those books, one of my favorite one was Madame Bovary, where the story of this married woman who had an affair with another person in the village that she was living. I read Devine Comedy. Devine Comedy was a big deal if the authority would find it in your houses. My dad doesn't have the book anymore, but and he gave it out to another person to read. But Devine Comedy is basically Dante's perception of the society that he was living at the time. I think it was 16th century. Where Dante talks in a form of poetry and epic poetry. He talks about all of those clerics and people who are messing out the society. It was very comparable against Iranian society, where the clerics were just messing out so much with the Iranian public. And of course, you know, with in Divine Comedy, Dante puts the prophet, he calls him Momo, and he puts the prophet Muhammad at the bottom of the hell, at the worst place that you could ever imagine. And of course, none of the Iranian authorities really appreciate that. So I read that book when I was only 16, and then I also read Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. Again, one of my favorite books, where it talks about how society really treats women as second sex, and it was exactly the time that I was experiencing as a woman back in my home country. But one of the books that truly enamored me, and I had so much fun. No, not so much fun, but I truly no. So the Second Sex and Divine Comedy and all of those books I absolutely cherished and loved to read. But one of the books that was into a discussion so much that I truly loved to read, but there was no way for me to get a hold of the book. No way. Was the Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. I was 17 when the book was published, and it was this big fatwa by Mr. Khomeini, calling him a kafir or blasphemous. Blasphemy. The book was blasphemy, and he was like a non-believer or kafir, and he did the fatwa that whoever finds Rushdie, can kill the man because he has diverted against from the religion. And it was a big deal. I mean, you have to remember that before Satanic Verses, Rushdie was in Tehran and received numerous awards from the Islamic Republic of Iran. I think it was Islamic Republic, but I think one or two. But having Satanic Verses published at the time, and when Khomeini did the fatwa, it was just a huge deal. So I truly wanted to read the book. I put up with reading the book until I came to the United States. At some point when I was living in Chicago, I went to a lecture that Mr. Rushdie was giving, and I just went talk to him, and I asked the question that, okay, so how did you feel, and what was it for you when you heard Mr. Khomeini did the fatwa against you and against the book? And he looked at me. He's a funny guy with a British interesting accent. He looked at me and he said, definitely helped with the selling the books. And he immediately continued that it was extremely scary time for me. I couldn't, I was just so fearful of my life, day and night, at every second. So it was very scary, and it was scary. So given the fact that this was like a absolutely forbidden book, I was in Seattle, University of Chicago's bookstore, one time when I actually saw the book. I saw the book, and I mean, I never forget this interaction. So I'm just walking by the bookshelves, and I'm just reading, seeing all through all of those books over there, and this is the book, Satanic Verses and Salman Rushdie. I grab the book, I look at the book, I look at the cover, and then I buy the book. I mean, of course. So here's the thing: there is a dread in my heart. There is this 17-year-old girl in my mind, thinking that, should I buy this book? This book was forbidden. If I buy this book, what happens? It was just, it took me through many years back when I was in Tehran, but there was no danger here, and the book was on the bookshelf. So I grabbed the book, I paid for the book, and I started reading. I read the book. Not cover to cover. I just, for up until now, I have only read half of the book. And it was pretty eminent for me why Mr. Khomeini was truly upset about the book. So the book mentions him at some point as one of the leaders of the Muslim nations, and he also, the book mocks the the former king of Iran, the Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, in some of the lines and some of the chapters. And to me, was when I was reading the book is novel. It's just, a novel. And when I was reading the book, I think I understood all of those back and forth and backlash against the book. But I still believe that one of the reasons that Mr. Khomeini really didn't like the book was, I think, because of the sections that has been written about him. And he didn't, I don't think he read the book, but probably of the reports of the book that has been given to him. And besides, it's about the Prophet, and it's about basically mocking at some point. So and then the title is very flashy. The title is very flashy. So I think for all of those reasons that the book was forbidden back in Iran. But I had pretty fun time reading the book. Yes, I read so many books, and I was so happy that I had this chance in my teenage years that I was able to read the books. My dad didn't really want us to go out and to be outside and in the public. He didn't believe in what the Islamic Republic of Iran is imposing against women. So whenever we left the house, we had to cover, and we had to put on scarf, we had to put on robe, and my dad was so against that. He was thinking that this is not the right way to teach women to be independent. In order to how us to be independent, perhaps, or teach us to be independent, he forced us to read books. Again, I have fun stories about how we read books. It's usually a book that was read by my sister. Was very quick. She reads books extremely quick. So then she usually was the first person, and then we read books in volumes, like 10 volumes, it's 3 volumes, 8 volumes, so in volumes. So it was usually the time when Zohre was reading the first book of Joseph Balsamo by a French writer, and it was 3 volumes. And then when she finished the first book, my dad started reading, And after my dad started the first book, my sister was on the third volume, and my dad was on second, and I was on first. And then we kept talking about the incidents that was happening in the book, and usually spoiled the story because she knew the story. Anyway, but it was fun time. Maybe next time I'm going to talk about Zabihullah Mansouri, again, one of the translators in Iran, that he was monumental. This is Sarajamshidi. I truly want you, if you could please subscribe to my channel. I publish, this is for the reason that I put here, this is Gold2 News. It's a news website that I manage with my team. We try to write stories that brings, not books, but stories, short stories, and news stories, or feature stories that tells the story of other nations in the most peaceful way that we could ever imagine. We focus on modest fashion, yet at the same time, peace journalism is in my heart. I think we need a bridge between these two huge civilizations of Islamic civilization and Western civilization. And I think that we shouldn't be in a clash between the civilizations. I think we can be in a conversation and dialogue, as Mr. Khatami said. So I believe in that, and with the work that we do in Gold2 News, we are trying to emulate that. We try to do the work of just having a discussion by telling the stories of individuals who are bridging gap between the nations, to tell those stories and to contribute to the world peace, to the understanding of nations, understanding between nations, and peace among nations. Please stay tuned with me. I'm going to talk about books again. This is the subject I truly cherish, but I'm also going to talk about the kind of stories that we cover in Gold2 News. I'm going to talk about my life as a reporter back in Tehran, and perhaps my life as a publisher in the United States. How I see that we say we have a freedom of press, but in fact everything is controlled. And I'm going to talk about so many different issues. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Khoda Hafiz. Khoda Hafiz in Farsi means may God protect you. Khoda Hafiz. And I'm going to hit the stop button. Okay, bear with me. Okay, voila.